name is Bev Ferris and I'm the editor of the Business Travel magazine, and welcome to our latest Business Travel podcast. Today I am delighted to be speaking with Adam Kerr, who is CEO and founder of Tripism. Hi Adam.
Hi Bev.
How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Are you talking to me from your home office today or from an actual office, or?
I am at home today.
And do you work mainly from home?
I do approximately 3 days at home and then 2 days in the office.
Okay.
So if the dog starts barking, you'll know where I am.
I've got the same problem here. So we're going to be talking today about mainly about how you founded the company, because it's quite an interesting story, I know. So let's start with that. How did you get into business travel? Because you haven't been in the industry for forever, have you? Like a lot of people that I speak to. So talk me through the story.
Yeah, no, not at all. So my background is startups and fintech, really. So I work for some payment companies, WillPay when it was really small, and then I worked for a mobile payment company in the US. I traveled a lot, like we all do, for work. And when I worked for those startups, I just found it kind of clunky and cumbersome to plan my business trips. And then I worked for some larger organizations also. And almost the larger the company, the harder my business trip planning became, really, even though they had really good resources and travel teams and so on internally. And I traveled a lot, so I found it really frustrating. And I just thought, it was something that needed to be fixed. And I'd worked for those startups previously, and they'd been very successful. And I thought, right, I'm going to do my own startup and try and fix that problem within corporate travel and make that traveler experience much better. And I worked for Ericsson for a while in Stockholm, and we were kind of doing a banking the unbanked project, and we're going to go to different, emerging market countries and so on. And business travel's, fairly standardized patterns of travel. People go and see the same customers, or they go to the same office locations. And I just found it, really crazy that there was no kind of sharing of knowledge. And there was a kind of particular trip where we went to Lagos, and it was quite a lot of work for us as individuals to try and kind of piece together the information. How do you get from Stockholm to Lagos, and then how do you get from Lagos airport to the hotel, and then where can we take clients out for dinner, and so on and so forth. And we did all of this work, and it took a lot of time to kind of piece it all together. And then about 6 weeks later, a technical team was doing exactly the same trip. And they had to start all over again and do exactly the same planning and research that we'd done. And I just thought, it's ridiculous. So I gave up my job at Ericsson and founded Tripism. And like you said, I'm not from the background at all, and I didn't really know very much about the business travel industry. So I was, reading a lot of the press and looking for kind of, experts in the field and influential speakers and things. And I saw some really good articles with some really good ideas by a chap called Eric Bailey at Microsoft. So I thought he'd be a really good person to speak with. And I just, picked up the phone and cold called him. And, as luck would have it, he answered the phone. I talked to him about what we were trying to do and the kind of prototype that we'd built so far. He said that he recognized exactly the same problem, and they were actually trying to build something themselves internally within Microsoft. So I got on the next plane and went to Redmond and sat down with him and the team and talked about what we were doing. And they agreed that they would stop doing the project that they'd started internally, and that they would work with us to, to start to build out this technology. So it was great. It was a really good start. Microsoft was our first customer. And they were, such a great team, and they continued to be a really great team to work with. They, gave us access to kind of some of the, travelers within the organization. We can talk to them, get their feedback about different ideas, understand the problems that they had specifically. And then after about 12 months, we launched the first version of the technology with them globally, and, the rest's history.
It's Tripism. So I'm trying to think. So did that kind of thing exist to some extent in the leisure side? Because you hear about people, sharing, if you went backpacking, for example. I imagine there was something that was there for that end of the market. Is that correct? Am I imagining that? Would there be something similar out there, but aimed at places that lots of people be traveling to? But I guess business travelers will be going to places like Lagos, which is not particularly popular. There's not going to be that information out there. Is that
there are different things really on there. So I think, one, if you're a traveler within an organization, I have a high degree of trust with my colleagues and co-workers. I think we all do it. If I'm planning a trip somewhere, for my, with the family, almost part of that kind of experience is the planning of the trip. And, if we're going to New York or something, it's really nice to kind of learn about the different areas and see what's going on. And that's part of my experience for a leisure trip. And there are, obviously there's TripAdvisor and those kinds of resources. When I use TripAdvisor, I just scan through those reviews really quickly, and I'm just kind of trying to gauge, is the general trend towards good or is it towards bad? Yeah. And I don't really read the reviews. They're kind of, ranting, raving, my soup was cold, I hate this hotel kind of thing. Whereas I think with business travel, like I say, the patterns of travel are much more standardized. Your requirements typically are much more straightforward. If I've got a meeting at 8 o'clock in Midtown Manhattan, then typically I want a hotel that's close to that meeting or easy to get to from the airport. So I have much more kind of specific requirements. And you'll know yourself, the first time you go somewhere, your experience is slightly clunky as you kind of get your head around what's going on. And when you've made that trip a few times, it becomes much smoother and much easier because you understand, the best way to get from the airport, or, hey, there's this really great restaurant near the office, or, but that knowledge is already within your company. There's just never been a really kind of effective way of sharing it. Typically, if you know someone that works there, you'll email them and say, hey, I'm trying to find a restaurant. Can you recommend somewhere? Or what's the best way to get from the airport? So part of the concept was really that kind of collective knowledge become a central place for people to be able to share that information so that other travelers could benefit from the kind of collective experience within the company, and have a much better experience. The second piece was, I was amazed because when I work for SMEs, you never get any kind of benefits or, promotions or anything. You book your ticket, you pay, you go on your flight. And I was amazed at the really great benefits and promotions that some of these employees got as being an employee of those organizations. But the challenge was, it wasn't, they couldn't find it. So, we did a bit of a survey relatively early on. I think it was about 90% of business travelers had no awareness of the kind of great benefits that they could get. So, the other piece that we focused on was really enabling that travel team to be able to communicate, all the different things that the program did.
Like so, what kind of things do you mean? Things like upgrades and...
Yeah, exactly. Like when I especially when I fly on the States, I'm sit there and they call the plane, and I am always the last person to get on the plane. Whereas a lot of those companies, they have, priority boarding and things. So when you book your ticket through the booking tool, you're the first, and as an employee of an SME, I'm back of the bus, zone 6 or whatever it is. But those people, if they book it, then they, with some of the airlines, like they can go on board the plane. And those things, in some ways they're relatively small, but they can make a big difference, and they can make you feel like valued and kind of special and things. And I think, people were missing out on that, on, knowing about those things. So, and I think travel teams are the sort of great unsung heroes. That's one of the things I think I've learned since I've been in this industry. They do such a great job, but I don't think they get kind of, all the credit sometimes that they should do for creating these like really fantastic, complex travel programs.
Definitely. So just going back to your own career, who's been your greatest influence, would you say? And would it be somebody who's who you've met since being in travel, or before that?
I think so. I was lucky enough, I live in Cambridge. It's a kind of high tech, really good place for really good startups, and I was fortuitous to join some, really good startups. So WillPay was tiny when I joined, and then it grew to be a huge, multi-billion-dollar company. But the, kind of the bosses of those companies that I worked for, they were like really great people, and they were great, for me when I worked there, but they've also been a great kind of support afterwards. So, David Sear, who ran WillPay at the very beginning, I've stayed in contact with him. He's actually an investor within Tripism, and he's been a kind of great support, and, he's always had time to kind of help out. Sir Ron Khalifa, took over and, made WorldPay into the kind of huge organization it is. And again, he'd always, have time and was, a real kind of, mentor when I worked there. And I worked for another payment company, Bango, went to the US. Ray Anderson, again, fantastic support and, continued to help me through the years. And it's the same really when I worked at Ericsson. My boss's boss was Hans Vesberg, who now runs Verizon. And again, he would just take any kind of time and, I feel like I could reach out to him and he'd help me these days. So, I think, and it's the same within business travel. I think people have been super helpful. I've found that with all of the organizations that we work with, people are really busy. They work within these, huge organizations, but they've been super supportive for us as a startup, helped us evolve our product. And, it's a really impressive part of this industry, I think.
And quite a brave thing to do your own startup in a world that you're not that familiar with. How did that feel, and what prepared you for that?
I think probably lack of knowledge prepared me for that. I think I often think probably things are going to be a bit easier than they are, and then they prove to be a bit harder than I originally thought. But I like a challenge. I think within those big companies, I think they've some of the kind of legacy providers have moved quite slowly, and it's difficult for them to achieve it. And part of that's because of the culture, and part of that is because of the scale. They have to be really careful about how they evolve their platforms, and sometimes they're built on legacy technology. For us to come in, straight away, we were a cloud, software as a services. We can move, kind of really quickly, and we can still do it today. So a lot of the new features that we roll out and the new services that we roll out, they're driven by requirements from the travel teams or from their travelers. And that's a super important piece for us. That's how we get better. Our customers are demanding, but we love it, and we ask them to be, demanding in the right way, and that helps. But we can build out those products and technology really quite quickly because our architecture's newer, and we've got a kind of fast moving dev team. What
have you learned personally along the way, along this journey, setting up?
I think so perseverance, definitely. You've got to really flip in, especially everybody who works in the travel team in the travel industry over the last few years, you've got to have it. So we were obviously concerned when COVID hit, but again, our customers were super supportive. Some of them actually accelerated invoice payment and things to help us with cash flow, really impressive things. The second piece, I think, is be brave. Just people are always happy to help and to talk. So we went when we very first started out, we thought, should we focus on SMEs? Should we focus on the larger corporations? We just emailed and cold called some of those big companies, and it's worked for us. The other piece that we found super helpful is, the industry events and the publications. It's really good news flow. The events are fantastic. We found those to be a massive help. Yeah.
And what do you, obviously you've not been in it a long time, but so far, what do you like about working in business travel?
I like that it's such an enormous industry, but it feels like a really kind of strong community. Like when I attend the events, even really early on, I felt super welcoming. People were like, "Oh, you're new," like kind of embraced you. And now when I go to the events, it's like meeting like really old friends. It's a really nice industry to work in, much nicer than some of the other sectors that I've worked in the past. I think people are super welcoming, super helpful. Like I touched on before, like all the customers we work with, they're great and really supportive of startups and moving things along.
Which ones weren't so welcoming and friendly then? You don't have.
I think they're all kind of different, aren't they, in their own way, but so like fintech was great. It's super fast, like growing really quickly. And I think there's huge amounts of change within business travel. It must just be the culture of the industry, maybe the way it's, you know, evolved and things. It's a really kind of, it feels friendly. I mean, I can't really explain why, but the people within it. And I think, you know, once that culture's set, then as new people come in, you know, they carry that culture through, and it, you know, continues through the years.
Yeah. So if anyone was thinking about joining the industry, what would you say to them? What would your advice be to somebody thinking about?
I'd say do it. Like, you know, I think there's like loads of opportunities. I think there's still going to be, you know, there's you know, a good kind of mixture of different kinds of companies to work for. If you want to work for a kind of, you know, large established company, there's some, you know, really great opportunities, and they, you know, do some really good things. I think there's tons of, you know, really great startups, and I think there'll be more of those. And I'd say, you know, if you're thinking about it and you're not sure, then, you know, see if you can come along to some of the events and talk to some of the industry, you know, groups and things, and then get a sense of it. I think there's some, you know, really great opportunities, because it's a, you know, big industry that's going through kind of shifts and change, and that creates opportunities. And I think there's tons of great companies.
And so far, what's been your proudest moment, would you say, in your career so far?
I think you know, getting Tripism up and running and growing it and evolving it, you know, it's satisfying to build a team of really good people and to see them develop and succeed in their roles. So I think, you know, I worked for those really good companies, and they were like, you know, very small startups, and they grew to be hugely successful, and that was great. But I think to be able to do it, you know, my own startup, and to do it with a really great team, you know, I'm proud of it, and, you know, we continue to kind of build on it. We've got a long way to go, but it's good so far.
What's the long-term plan?
I think, you know, it's a really interesting time in travel. I think, you know, there's big changes, shifts in the technology. There's, you know, shifts in the, you know, the marketing tools and so on. I think there's still, you know, massive opportunity. So, you know, we're still relatively small. There's about 10 people in the organization. We've got about 30 customers. You know, we're seeing huge growth, but we still think there's, you know, lots of opportunities to go at. So we're just going to keep building.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been really, really great hearing about your plans and your career and your thoughts on the industry. And welcome again to the industry, although you've been here for quite a few years now. And good luck with everything. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good to talk with you today, Bev.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.